So today we have Professor Joni Roberts. My name is Victor Michael Camacho, and I am an assistant professor in the occupational therapy department. Professor Joni Roberts here is an adjunct business professor from here, right here at Kean University, and she's been here with us since 2015, and we just shared that I was an adjunct professor in 2006. And when she arrived here, she helped launch Kean Online by developing the first international business and trade course. She is a vice program chair for Saylor Academy, leading the innovation and sustainability course development using all open education resources. As the founder of Evolution U Publishing, Joni created a new evolved sustainability framework that helps individuals, organizations, and universities take action for a better world. The framework is simple, engaging, and impactful, and features a new compassion-centered stakeholder approach that serves to counter the damage done by the profit-driven industrial era. Cheers to you, Professor Joni Roberts, for your efforts thus far, and I'm excited to hear you present today. As a reminder to our attendees, there will be a survey at the end of this presentation. Professor Joni welcomes questions in the chat box, and I will be able to relay those to her as the questions come up. And I think with that, I hand the microphone over to Professor Joni Roberts. And again, thank you for presenting today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to be part of this conference and to be able to talk about education for sustainable development and how open educational resources can help us bridge the curriculum content gap. And I'll be talking about the SDGs, which are the world's blueprint for achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. Yet there is little to no integration of education for sustainable development in mainstream higher education textbooks. And this leaves many graduates to enter the workplace without the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities to address today's global challenges. So I hope that during our presentation, we'll find some ways to bring more of that in to what we're doing in higher education. All right, so I'll be covering 3 sections with you. First is the sustainability revolution, where we will be discussing a world in transition and the changing purpose of a business and aligning to the sustainable development goals. And then we'll be applying the evolved sustainability framework to education for sustainable development to help us solve that curriculum gap. And then we'll find ways to get started by discovering and integrating OER into higher ed. Okay, I was just trying to adjust my camera. All right, so we're in the early stages of what some people are calling the sustainability revolution, and it's the shift from the mindsets of the Industrial Revolution to what Al Gore explains as the single biggest opportunity in the history of the world. It has the scale of the Industrial Revolution coupled with the speed of the digital revolution. So to create a better future, we need to take a moment and understand the past and where we're coming from. So the Industrial Revolution was characterized by business leaders who were able to organize people and resources to build faster and cheaper goods for masses around the world. So we saw, the stock markets being born, and the most admired companies are the ones that made the most profits. And for workers, industry meant long, hard days of physical labor, little creative contribution, and persevering until a pension was earned decades later. And that's the vision I grew up with, from the people ahead of me. I'm from Flint, Michigan, and from an auto worker family. And so as time went on, businesses became globalized, and marketing and production and delivering that consumer dream faster and cheaper to more and more people. So in the past 150 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of economic wealth built along with a new middle class. So from all of this came an unintended impact where we see the devastating effects of the industrial era and what that's done to our planet. So we had this exponential growth, but done in a way that's also causing unsustainability. So we see rapid biodiversity loss, species loss, climate change, the corresponding weather events. And from around the year 2000 forward, we are seeing a widening gap between the rich and the poor, which is threatening that middle class that was built up. The upside is we are on the pathway of profound change, and we are seeing shifting values. And what happens when people are able to reach middle class and above is that people shift from those urgent needs of surviving to this expanded state of thriving. And the idea of having money and comforts at the expense of everything else is no longer acceptable. So people, are wanting to see an evolved view of what prosperity looks like and feels like. So we see, things coming out like the World Happiness Report and quality of life metrics. Things like education, health, wellness, equality, social and environmental justice, higher trust, and better relationships, all of that in balance with the economic drivers and indicators like GDP. So with the sustainability revolution, we need to ask, how can we do better? And how can we now create the conditions for sustainability? And the old way was to put shareholders at the center of businesses and align all of the decisions accordingly to drive those profits. So now we need to ask, what would happen if we consider the systemic impact of everything we do across all stakeholders and simply ask, does this action create a better world? And then, yes.
Professor Roberts, I'm sorry. Would you mind sharing the screen, the PowerPoint?
You're kidding me. It's not being shared?
We just have the first page.
I am so sorry. It's advancing on my end. It says I'm screen sharing. I am screen sharing. Let me try again. Let me stop share and start again.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, tell me these things. I need to know because now I'm having a challenge finding my screen share. Oh, it's on my other screen. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is unplug my monitor, and I think that may be part of the problem. Are you able to see my slide now? Or maybe I'll stop share again.
And I can always share if you want, but if you want to try on your side.
Can you see the first slide?
Yes, I can.
Second slide?
Yes.
Yay. Oh, God. You know, all this technology and connectors and, you know, everything on my end looked just fine. So, all right, great.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for letting me know. So, yeah, I shared with you the description and then, you know, how we're going to move through the 3 sections and talked about the sustainability revolution, this quote from Al Gore, and then comparing the industrial revolution to the sustainability revolution and talking here about like asking these questions. If we instead of putting the drive, you know, for profits and the shareholders at the center, if we put stakeholders at the center and simply ask the question, does this action create a better world? What would the outcomes be then? And what would our world look like? And how would our communities and companies be different? And how would we be different? And I think we would see a tremendous difference in the way that we do things, because so many things that we are doing are not creating a better world. They're all having, many of them have negative consequences. So this gives us an opportunity to, you know, consider to help us, you know, define and shape, innovate, and then have the courage to make the changes. All right, so this is all rather recent because when, you know, I got my MBA in the year 99, 2000, we were taught that the fiduciary duty of a company is to maximize profits for the shareholders. And what we know now is that that's an unsustainable approach for people, for the planet, and for a more, you know, expanded view of what prosperity is. And so in 2019, we had the Business Roundtable make an announcement about the statement on the purpose of a corporation. And now it is to include all stakeholders. So that was a signal for a, you know, very big change around the world. And that was signed by 181 American CEOs. So what we see now is that Americans deserve an economy that allows each person to succeed through hard work and creativity, and to lead a life of meaning and dignity. And then, you know, we see some stakeholders mentioned here, like customers, employees, suppliers, communities, and a shift for generating long-term value for shareholders. And that's a change from this quarterly drive for short-term profits, which has kind of gotten us where we are today. Now, you may look at all this and, you know, notice that some companies are doing this better than others. And there's certainly a lot of improvement to be made in changing the way that we do business. And so that's where higher education really comes into place, to be a driver of that change by teaching different things than what I was taught just a little over 20 years ago. So one way to do this is through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And these were launched in 2030, and they are a blueprint for a better and more sustainable future for all. So we have these 17 goals and 169 targets within the goals. And you can see they cover a lot of stakeholders, and they cover, you know, it's very comprehensive for covering the issues related to social and environmental sustainability. And, you know, the goals represent areas of improvement for every community and every company to be better. So sometimes, like maybe there's some impressions in the United States that the United Nations is for developing countries. Like, we're set, we're all good, you know, we don't need these goals, you know, we're so ahead of everything. Well, that's not exactly true, because when you look at these goals, You can find areas of improvement, every single one of these in our own backyards, right? With poverty, with hunger, with environmental effects, climate change. I mean, all of this is affecting us everywhere. So what's
Professor,
happening? Oh, yes. Mhm.
Professor Roberts, Paul, he asked, you mentioned Flint, Michigan, and the impact on their water supply. How does a company disclose how its business model is sustainable? For example, the oil and gas industry. Another example is the mining industry, and at the same time to be kind to the environment. For example, the Paris Accord to reduce greenhouse gases. That question comes from Paul.
Hi, Paul. Yes, thank you for your question. Well, I mean, if we look at all of these decisions being made there in the three examples you've given, the water supply in Flint, Michigan, the fossil fuel industry, the coal industry, when we simply ask that question, do these actions create a better world? We can say that there were a lot of very poor decisions made along the entire way. There were poor decisions made in Flint, Michigan related to the water supply. And if people did stop and reflect about long-term systemic effects of those decisions, wow, I mean, what a difference that would have made. So making the best decisions requires us to slow down and seriously consider all of the impacts of that decision. And so many people get hurt when decisions are not made, considering all of the stakeholders and all of the outcomes. And yes, it's very sad. And we know that, the signals for the fossil fuel industry and getting off oil, and this it's not new. That's many, many, many decades already. We've known this. And have we done enough to make those shifts? Nope. We're still doing quick and easy. We're still thinking too short term. And so we definitely need to, redo our infrastructure and redo our investments. And imagine, what if we did have all electric vehicles versus fossil fuel? That would certainly create a better world. And that have a monumental impact on our climate conditions and the air that we breathe, the very air that we breathe. And imagine if vehicles were silent, all of that noise pollution would also go down. And what's exciting is that these sustainable development goals give us an outline to do better. We can do so much better than what we've done.
Vicki adds compassion to the corporate decision-making process. That statement came from Vicki.
Yes, hi, Vicki. Yes, so compassion, my definition of compassion is to consider the experiences of another and have empathy towards their experience. And then the action part, compassion is always action. I even say compassion is empathy in action. The action is to improve the conditions and experiences of others. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others, compassion for the planet, compassion for animals. Wow, what if we put compassion at the center of our decision making? And even in business, doesn't it make sense that you're there to improve the condition and experience of others? Isn't that really why we're all here? And if we did that, if we truly led from that place and made our decisions accordingly, we would create a much better world for humanity and the planet than the one that we have now. So I think the short-sightedness and the drive for profits got people out of alignment with what's truly the most important. All right, so another exciting thing about this is that these goals, yes, they represent an investment, not an expense. They are According to the Better Business, Better World report, which was put out by the Business and Sustainable Development Commission in Europe, they said the goals represent a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. So we're actually sitting on an amazing opportunity to be the change and the change makers. So now, how can we apply the Evolve Sustainability Framework to help us get through some of this? And this is a quote from me, which I've pretty much already shared with you, my ideas on this, which are that we can create a much better world for humanity and the planet than the one that we have now. And that this next decade is pivotal for evaluating, imagining, innovating, and implementing these challenges. So I created this framework and compassion-centered stakeholder approach. And the reason why I did it is because I, would be in on meetings and I would hear young people, they're out in their corporate jobs and they're being tasked with trying to figure this out. And there weren't any really good frameworks that were simple, engaging, taking the mystery out of how to get started, integrating these kinds of actions into the way that we do things right now. And so we can also do this for higher ed and education for sustainable development, which in my view is missing from the way that we're doing things. So it's giving us this opportunity. And this is a stakeholder approach that I created. And if we draw from this as customers in higher ed, we would say those are our students, right? That's why we're here. And if we look at the people, products, and processes, we can just draw out the product, education for sustainable development. And so just focusing on those two areas, we can get into the framework, which will take us through the evaluation stage, the current state, then into the imagination phase, the what if, and then the innovation, which is the desired state, and then the implementation, which is the action plan. And my entire framework is very robust. It has a lot of layers and questions and that go with it. But we can do, a quick application of this framework. So it does actually include a gap analysis. So when we go from the current state to the desired state, what's between there is the gap for us to consider. And then it does go from the sparking imagination to taking action. And the thing is that if you go straight to a gap analysis without imagination in the middle, you're missing a lot right there. And you cannot go from imagination straight to action without a gap analysis. And I've been in entrepreneurship as a coach and also an entrepreneur myself. And a lot of times we see people do that. I've got this great idea, let's implement it. But you've also got to determine the needs in the marketplace. So right now, what's going on in higher ed with education for sustainable development? Well, in my experience as 13 years as an MBA and undergrad business professor, I will share that there's little to no ESD and little to no UN SDGs for 2030 being found in mainstream higher ed textbooks or curriculum. It's usually a separate topic. It's covered in an environmental science course or a social science course or a social entrepreneurship course. If the SDGs are mentioned, they are one small paragraph in a chapter of a core business textbook or not mentioned at all. So that demonstrates low importance. What happens is that university leadership, they may be hearing about it like, yeah, the SDGs and sustainability, we need to do something, but they're unsure about how to get started or how, to really start putting this education into the curricula. Also, some professors are hesitant to teach something new or unfamiliar. And my personal experience, and I think I'm stretching it by saying 1 in 10 students have heard of the SDGs, unless they're just very shy and not saying that they have heard of it. My experience is that few students are aware of them and have any involvement with the SDGs. Another problem is case studies. So higher ed curriculum, is not integrating social and environmental sustainability as a strategic driver of success in every single case study done. Instead, you get the corporate social responsibility case study, like 1 out of like 10 or 15 in a book now. And that's not enough. That's the old way. The new way is that this is put into every single case that we talk about. So I think there was a hand raised.
Professor Roberts, when you have a moment, Paul and then Sue had comments. Would you like
Okay,
to share
great.
right now?
Sure.
Paul asked, can the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, play a role by encouraging sustainable investment tax credits for businesses? And then he goes on to say, for example, the tax credit to purchase an electric vehicle or install solar panels, reduce greenhouse gases. How does the EPA play a role in sustainable development of new products? And that was Paul's question.
I think that it's definitely an interplay of government incentives, government investment, business investment, and also higher education playing a role in readying students to enter the workplace with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to address these global challenges. Because in my evaluation right now, I don't think we're doing a good enough job of that in higher ed. And so you can't do this single-handedly, and you can't change the world as one business, at the level we need to change the world. And you can't do it as one university. I mean, we need critical mass. We need governments that have signed on to the UN SDGs to actually be doing their part to bring these into being and making the investments. We need to hear our government talking about the UN SDGs, inspiring individuals to do more for recycling, repurposing, reducing, all of those things, for companies to participate more in the circular economy and the life cycle analysis of products. And we need to be teaching that in higher ed, how we do these things. And it needs to be commonplace, not rare, to really make the changes we need.
I guess to go off of what you just said, Professor Roberts, Sue says, I teach a course in SDGs with 20 students, and not a single one heard about it before enrolling. And the textbook costs about $300. And I only want to use OER. So Sue was also considering the $300 textbook versus only wanting to use OER to educate on SDGs.
Wow, that's so interesting. Okay, so on one hand, you're confirming my own impression, as a professor, and bringing up the SDGs and weaving this into my courses as much as possible in the live. I teach 100% online, so in the live lectures and in the discussions, and when I have the opportunity to create and write cases, I definitely include this information. So $300 for a textbook, wow, that's extraordinary to me. I think it's extraordinary expense for students. And
Sue wants to make sure to let everybody know that she does not use the SDG textbook in her course.
Yeah, that would be, I bet you'd have a lot of students who'd skip out on buying that one. That's pretty hard to take on, I think. Yeah, so, well, I'm glad to know there's an SDG textbook. I also think that's quite a price on it. I don't really think that meets SDG for quality education that's affordable. That's one of the SDG goals, quite frankly. So that's my view on that price point. Yeah, okay, so we're still at evaluation, and things are changing. So as of 2020, we have new requirements for the AACSB, which is the Business Accreditation Standards. And now for Standard 9, we have engagement and societal impact. Schools need to be demonstrating that they are teaching this, and also having outcomes aligned to the 17 UN SDGs, at least some of them, but I think a university, most of them can handle all of them. So you need to have this coming from accreditation side of the demand for this. We also have demand on the corporate side, because now impact reporting has become very quickly very important. Over the pandemic, the rise in corporations doing environmental, social, and governance reporting, ESG reporting, it has risen dramatically. Now young people are being tasked with trying to figure out what they need to do to participate in this. Also, impact reporting that was once voluntary is moving towards mandatory, and even the US Securities and Exchange Commission proposed some new rules. The European Commission, with their corporate sustainability reporting directive, they are putting out mandatory standards that are expected to begin this year. So the world can't wait anymore. And honestly, we're behind. We're behind the times. And students, even though they may not have heard of the SDGs, especially in the United States, other countries, the rate is higher. But here's a study by Bath University, put out just end of last year. And they surveyed 10,000 participants aged 16 to 25 in across 10 countries. And this is what young people are feeling. So 83% agree that people have failed to care for the planet. 77% agreed the future is frightening. 65% agree governments are failing young people. 77% believe humanity is doomed. I mean, our young people have real anxiety surrounding these issues. So 84% feel at least moderately worried, and 59% feel very or extremely worried about climate change. And half felt sad, anxious, angry, powerless, helpless, and guilty. I mean, these are very big numbers. Young people need to feel that they can help solve these problems, because when you take action, you start to alleviate the anxiety. And so that's how we can help students. So I have the study here, People's Voices on Climate Anxiety, Government Betrayal, and Moral Injury, a Global Phenomenon. And I can share out my slides. They'll also be posted in Kean's OER repository, and you can click on all these links. All right, so there was a lot on the evaluation end, but it does show us that this isn't wishful thinking. I mean, we need to make these changes. So now if we use our imagination and we ask, what would great look like? If we had a sustainability education throughout all of our curricula. So, well, it'd be woven into all of our courses, and the SDGs would have high importance from leadership. They'd be celebrated throughout the university. Can you imagine having like clubs and contests and these, creativity, innovation, enthusiasm increases, and professors are given the tools that are engaging and impactful to teach sustainability. All the students embrace social and environmental sustainability and have the competence to lead initiatives. It's woven into all the case studies. And a cool part about the UN SDGs is that it connects students and staff to others around the world because you have these shared global goals. And there are a lot of organizations and ways for students to participate in these SDG action zones and, global goals events and global citizen events. And it's very exciting to be connected to others around the world. And so from the student stakeholder perspective, they would be entering the workplace with the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities to address today's global challenges. So that is actually pretty exciting. So now we need to wonder about, well, okay, great. That picture sounds really good. Oh, and by the way, that would mean, we actually achieve the global goals by 2030, which we're at risk of not achieving these goals because we are, quite frankly, too far behind. All right. So how do we get there? What's the innovation that's needed? And what will it take to make these changes? Well, we certainly need university leadership and campus-wide commitment to education for sustainable development. And then we need a sustainability task force, which I'm very proud to say Kean University, under our current president, has created, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And the task force does engage administration, professors, and students in promoting the UN SDGs. It's brand new. If you want to be a part of it, reach out to me. And the committees are just being formed. And, these things will take time, but you'll notice in the next 1, 2, 3 years, you'll hear a lot more about this at Kean University. So we'll need investment in people, training, and events to increase the school spirit for sustainability. And we'll need investment in new approaches to education that can be readily adopted by educators and provide robust learning experiences for students. Right. Also, we need new educational material. And with that comes the make, buy, redesign, and the OER decisions. So we're going to have to redo our courses and our learning objectives and our program outcomes. All of those things need to be redone to make sure sustainability is at the forefront. All right, so how will success be achieved? And I want to point out, I found this super cute image. It's OER, look at that, on a bench, and it's by Manfred Steger. It's on Pixabay. I thought that was pretty cute. So how will we get there? What's our action plan? Well, first, we need to align the university values and vision to sustainability, to be a sustainability leader. Then we need to, like I said, align all the program and course learning outcomes accordingly. We need to integrate OER to help bridge this gap because the traditional textbooks aren't there yet. And there's a lot of it out there too, so I'm going to share that with you in a moment. Then we need to create a repository of OER materials for university staff, students, and educators, which we know Kean is doing, and they have this fantastic conference for 2 years now. And there are other repositories as well. Then we need to ready the students to help solve our social and environmental issues. All right, so how do we do this? How do we get started? Locating, curating the OER. Well, one way to get started is with free resources. And I want to point out that free is not always the same as open. And so to have truly open, you need to look for that Creative Commons licensing. However, you can share links to anything that's on the internet in your courses, and you can offer access and links to free courses and resources. Well, there are just some fine lines between what you can do with Creative Commons. There are different license levels. Some you can adapt, mix, reuse. Some you have to use exactly as they are. Some you have to give credit, some you don't, but they're all the CC BY Creative Commons licensing that you can look up. But free means that it's free for you to access. And the United Nations itself has a mixture of free and OER. So you need to look at that when considering these resources for your courses and how you're going to integrate them. So under all of these green fonts are links to UN websites. So you have your main hub. Then in the UN, there are several other agencies and departments that work on the UN SDGs. They have a lot of information on the goals, the targets, statistics, infographics. They have events you can partake in. And then let's see, next is the SDG Academy. This is done by Sustainable Development Solutions Network. These are Creative Commons courses and library of resources. SDSN is led by Jeffrey Sachs. Up until recently was a professor at the Earth Institute, Columbia University. Lots of great information there. Then we have the World Bank has this really interesting atlas of sustainable development goals. It's interactive storytelling and data visualizations about the 17 goals, and that is OER, Creative Commons license. Another thing that's great, I mean, for training staff, training professors, I would recommend the SDG Academy. I also recommend this, the SDG Primer. And this is a United Nations foundational course for SDG, great for onboarding teams. It's not OER. You just go to their site and take the course. Then as well, I also put out a lot of information on social media to support the UN SDGs, and you can follow me with my unique hashtag of Evolve Our World. I like to take these, memes and images I create, put them in my course announcements, integrate them into discussions, and you are welcome to do the same. They are free to use. And also, I'd like to mention Josephine Cotonio. She's a senior at Kean University. She's been with me for a year. She puts out a social media mini blog every Wednesday related to the Sustainable Development Goals. They're really good. I highly recommend you look up our hashtag and check those out. I also created a free course. I launched this during the pandemic, and it's More Compassion for People and the Planet. You're welcome to send your students here. It's free to everyone, everywhere. 50% of the students are international from over 30 countries. So it's been really rewarding to do this and share this. Several Kean University students have taken it and given some really good feedback. So I encourage you to check that out. All right, so then next is, these are open ed resources. And I have a whole series here on how universities can start to transform themselves. Again, SDSM, led by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, they have this amazing kind of like an ebook that they've put out with so many links in it. It's definitely worth checking out. Accelerating Education for the SDGs in Universities, a guide for universities, colleges, and tertiary and higher education institutions. The real life challenges that you face in creating this kind of systemic wide change, and some great tips and for overcoming those, just loaded with great info. For all of these resources, I always recommend look at the references at the end. They're usually highlighted with more links, and you can just keep going on forever and finding more resources to support what you're doing. The United Nations, right in New York City, part of the Global Compact, they have PRME, which is the Principles of Responsible Management Education. This is to help business schools especially transition from being the, what is marketing? Marketing is creating consumer demand. What does consumer demand do? Consumer demand, it's all production and consumption. It's a little bit of our problem, and it's a challenging one to overcome. They just put out a new book, Curriculum and Learning for, no wait, Responsible Management Education, brand new, open ed, it's out there, check it out. Lots of people from universities from all over contributing to that. Another great book is led up by Radhika Iyengar and Christina Kwok on curriculum and learning for climate action towards an SDG 4.7, which includes higher ed, roadmap for systems change, fantastic information, a lot of chapters with a lot of contributors. Schools can take the pledge for Declaration of Global Engagement, and you're connected to other schools who've done the same. Kean University is going for STARS, the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System. We're using that as our framework to begin our sustainability initiatives. There are also impact rankings for the SDGs. There are all sorts of ways universities can get involved, and all you got to do is get going. Just start and get on the path. And it takes time, but it can definitely be done. All right, so for curating learning content, TED Talks, almost all of those are OER. TED also has TED Ed videos. These are really great short video lessons for educators and students, really cute. You can integrate those into your courses. The link behind this MIT is for educators to use their open courseware. They have, of course, they're like the originators for mass open online courses, and since the beginning, and they have just done a tremendous amount of work there. Sailor Academy, where I'm the Voice Program Chair. My course will be launched soon. I don't know, maybe in a month or two, but definitely, in the coming months. I created an innovation and sustainability course. The whole entire thing's OER. You can draw from all of it, my links, my curated content. And what I find too is that every course is unique, because I do course design, and there's no way you're just going to deliver an exact MIT course or my exact innovation and sustainability course, although you can, but it's pretty unlikely because you align everything to your own learning program and learning outcomes, and then it just changes, makes it unique. The sustainable business models, there are several European universities put together this playlist, very good, all Creative Commons licensed. Then there are some journals listed here and a link to this OER Commons. Oh my gosh, there's actually so much out there that it's hard to, you can end up searching and searching and searching and just go down one rabbit hole after another. Which is one of the challenges I list here, is that it's more time intensive to build a course from open educational resources than it is from a traditional textbook. Traditional textbooks are formulated chapter by chapter, just kind of like nicely put it all out there for you. Cases, your exam questions, all of that. Well, OER requires a lot more creativity and skill in developing a cohesive content and curricula that aligns to the learning outcomes. It's not always easy to find exactly what you need, but there is a lot of stuff out there. All right, so we'll stick with challenges. We'll stay on this side of the equation. And so professors need to be given the time and resources, including possibly even extra pay incentives, to build out these new courses. You can hire course designers. That's what Kean did with me in the very beginning to launch Kean Online, and something I do for universities. It also requires a cultural change university-wide to become a leader in sustainability, and that's not always easy either. You need the right leaders fully committed to this on every level. So what are some of the upsides? Well, what's really fun is that you get to create unique and rich learning experiences. You can set your school apart from what everyone else is teaching. When everyone else is teaching from the same traditional textbooks around the entire world, well, you can tweak things and vary things and add your own stuff. But with OER, you're more than likely creating a unique learning journey. And then you get to address today's global challenges with timely, relevant learning materials that's already there, happening now. And we don't have really any time to delay in solving these sustainability issues. Then, as I mentioned earlier, connecting with others around the world, it's really fun. It's really exciting and enriching. And you learn about what they're dealing with too. And then you learn about how what you're doing here, affects their livelihoods there and how interconnected we all are by these issues. So I recommend curating content by blending the free, the paid, and the OER, and figuring out the right mix, which does reduce cost to students. And the other side of that, of course, is that it's more time for professors and the university and more investment there. So I think it makes teaching more exciting to, research and present using open ed resources and custom resources. Yeah, so with that, I invite you all to stay in touch with me. I've got my email here, my LinkedIn, my company website where I offer some courses and professional development courses. Yeah, so thank you all so much. I also would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions or comments, love to hear them. This is Higher Education Goal 4.
Thank you so much, Professor Roberts, for so jam-packed with information. Oh my goodness. So we do have a couple minutes, and I know Paul had some questions that he had on the chat. Paul, if you want to ask them, I can sort of read them. And then Vicky just wanted to share that it was a great presentation. What is the name of your textbook mentioned?
The name of, I'm not sure because I mentioned a bunch of textbooks. I'm not sure, Vicky.
But the recording and as Professor Roberts said, the presentation itself will be available to everybody attending the conference.
I'm excuse me, I'm asking about the textbook that someone else mentioned that cost $300.
Oh, that one.
Oh, I think I think the Sue might have left us. Okay. Paul, did you want to ask your question or did you want me to read it? I guess Paul's question was, how can employers encourage the sustainable use of mass transit rather than, I guess, making the New Jersey Parkway or Turnpike very congested?
Yeah, well, I think one of the best ways for companies to create a spirit for sustainability is by having champions in the organization and having the company actually champion these sorts of behaviors. And a great way to do that is to do an assessment, just try to get some baseline numbers. Your numbers don't have to be perfect. Don't over worry it, just do your best to get some metrics. Then you can show like how much, you can make some estimates on how your company reduces carbon footprint by encouraging public transit. And then that's a cool stat that your company can share on the career portal, and why this is a cool place to work and a hip place to work. Is hip. It's cool to be green, and young people want to see that. They want to be a part of it.
And then another question was, are there any free OER resources provided by the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for use in our classes?
That's a great question, and I think that would be I would think that they would have if they, you know, not everyone realizes that they can put a Creative Commons license on what they publish. So sometimes just reaching out to them, say, hey, I love this publication. Can I have the permission to use it? Or can you just put a Creative Commons license on it? So you go to creativecommons.org, they just put it quickly through a little system, they choose their Creative Commons license, and then you just put it right on your document and let people know how they can use it. The most common is CC BY 4.0, you know, use as is and give attribution. And so, yeah, just reach out and say, hey, we love what you're doing. Would you do this for us? And more than likely they'll say yes, unless they have some particular reason why they can't.
Well, thank you, Professor Roberts. Again, once again, thank you for sharing all the information and sharing your knowledge and your experiences. We greatly appreciate your time. I also want to thank the audience for you know, having such lively questions and such a big interest. So continue to enjoy the conference, everybody. Go back to our main website, and you know, Mohammed had sort of put the next presentation starting at 3, but you can go back to the website and find different courses that interest you. Once again, please complete the survey. And with that said, thank you so much for attending, and continue to have a wonderful time at the conference. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone, for being here.